Nuremberg laws. These are Nazis intimidate people from going into a Jewish-owned store. Same thing there. To force Jews to leave. They wanted Jews and other undesirables and liberals, intellectuals to get the heck out. So this was a method of intimidation. And there would be daily, and this is what kind of like basically said, okay, we're going to shut our eyes, do anything you want. It's free game. And by 1939, about half of all Jews in Germany fled. They fled. Unfortunately, most countries would not allow them in, including the United States. They'd only take a few scientists and a few wealthy people. The National Origins Act, remember, this was an intensely racist time. Most of them ended up going to Poland. So that was pretty horrible for them. What's going to happen in Poland will be one of the great war crimes. And the Nuremberg laws. With that, in 1938, it would intensify with what's called Kristallnacht. And I keep on forgetting to do this. It's supposed to be 9 through 10, but for some reason a hyphen got here. I'm not sure why there's a hyphen here. Maybe I meant to put it here. I don't know why. But it's not 9/1.0. The 9th to the 10th. And this was, it's called the Night of the Broken Glass, meaning that's when they attacked the few remaining Jewish-owned stores or homes, basically with an organized state-sponsored terror against Jews to force them to leave. The Night of the Broken Glass, or Kristallnacht. And the trigger of it was a German diplomat was assassinated in Paris by a Jew, a Jewish immigrant from Germany, and the Nazis would use that as an excuse. Yeah.
Was the night the long night?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about here, but that's the kill off the SI, the leadership of the SI. 34. And the big reason Germany did it is, in 1938, November, they knew war was coming. A couple of events I'll get to in a sec. War is coming. When war comes, they did not want a population of people they considered to be traitors within their borders. And so it did not start immediately, this, you're putting Jews into concentration camps. No, Jews were not put in concentration camps until after the war began. Some will put here if they were communists or other reasons. And the reason I put in the SS St. Louis, that was a ship carrying refugees to the United States, 2,000 fleeing Kristallnacht. And the US would not allow them in. Almost all of them would be forced to go back, and virtually every single one of those people would die in, I believe, either Treblinka or Birkenwald, which is Auschwitz. And the reason I'm saying this, for a couple of reasons. First off, I'm not saying, boy, we were evil then. No, that's not the point. We were bad. There are a lot of gray areas in history. American history, as any other history, just like things are today. There's no yes, no answers. Propaganda, especially, remember I talked about how propaganda is yes and no, right and wrong. Remember yesterday I talked about Hitler's response? No, the world is not that way. There's not good and evil. Yes, clearly the United States was on the good side in World War II, but we were not all good. And there's not all good now in the United States. This country that you can be nationalistic or patriotic, but since I'm an American historian, I'm actually very patriotic. But I know for a fact there's a lot of gray areas to this day. And so the trend continues. We see the same kind of thing to this day where, yeah, we do good things, but also bad things. And it's something we as a people have to deal with. So to learn about that, it'd be really bad if I just taught you we only did good things. Because then how do you explain why there are bad things now? Wouldn't make sense, would it? So that's just an example. Well, anyways, oh, I should add this. My brother's first wife, you know, stuff happens, but she was Jewish, and she came. I remember this. This is over 20 years ago, but she was visiting my parents, and I was there in Miles City, and they went to the Congregational Church, went to Christmas service, which she thought was kind of funny. You know, she always thought Christmas was kind of a funny thing because Jews, I mean, for obvious reasons, that kind of amusing. And what they do at that service there is they sing a lot of Christmas carols. And I'll never forget this. They sang, it's a German song, but they sang it in English called Silent Night. Every Jewish child knows about Kristallnacht. And that reminded her of Silent Night. And it really bothered her. And it was something that was just, you know,
was an adult, and I mean, I'm like, I just never thought about it. And I realized, oh yeah. I mean, you just kind of understand the way other people think and understand, oh yeah, I understand. I just never thought about it. But that would be, I mean, that would bring back memories that I couldn't comprehend. In reality, I can understand it in a way, but not through her eyes. So it's really interesting. And his son constantly texted me last night during a basketball game. Okay, so let's get to this. While this is going on, Ethiopia. There's past going on to war. In 1936, Italy invaded Ethiopia. Italy. Now, remember the whole thing about making Rome great, the Roman Empire is coming back? Now, Ethiopia was not part of the Roman Empire. Ethiopia is down here. It's one of the last remaining countries that were independent, last of two. And so Italy invaded. That was implied, Roman greatness. But what happened was 30 years earlier, Italy, they were defeated trying to take Ethiopia. So this was like, see, we're back. We couldn't do it before, but now fascist Italy could do it. But here's the thing. The League of Nations, remember collective security? Do you remember Article 10? The League said, get out of Ethiopia. Another term was for Ethiopia is Abyssinia. Get out. That is an act of aggression, and that is not allowed. And Mussolini said, no. What are you going to do about it? And then left the League. What did the League do about it? No. Nobody was willing to go to war against Italy over Ethiopia, especially when all of these countries like Britain, France, especially Britain and France, when we think of Africa, they had been conquering and killing people to take colonies in Africa already. 30, 40, 50 years earlier before this. How can they say, when we did it 50 years ago, it was fine, it's good. Now, you can't do it, Italy. It made them look like, let me rephrase that, they were being hypocrites. And Italy called them on it. Japan's going to do the same thing to the United States in the Pacific. Yeah. Okay. And so, but this is an example how events are the kind of attempt for peace in the between the war eras was falling apart. Then, a civil war in Spain. I put these in the wrong order, so put the Republicans first. I'll explain the Abraham Lincoln Brigade in a second. There was a Republican form of government, but I put question marks because it really was a kind of a hackneyed coalition of different groups. Democrats, moderates, and communists, anarchists, were all members of this group. And in 1936, nationalists, who were, they called themselves nationalists, but they were fascists. A military coup was attempted. And this is going to lead to a 3-year, 36 to 39, civil war. The fascist military leader, actually he's a military leader and would say, hey, fascism works for me, Francisco Franco. But Italy and Germany directly helped Franco, especially after 36, into 37, 38, with troops and weapons, planes. A lot of people from all over the world came to help the Republican side, including Americans. They called them international brigades, but the American Abraham Lincoln Brigade were Americans who volunteered to fight the evils of fascism. And the reason I put that up there is it was already clear to a lot of people, fascism, and especially the German version, Nazism, was becoming a real threat to world, not just peace, to world civilization. Not completely. People didn't realize it quite yet. And Germany and France were scared to do anything. Now, the fighting will be pretty horrific. By 1939, the nationalists would win. Franco would become dictator of Spain all the way until 1976. And Spain still suffers from this. The fighting around Madrid would be some of the bloodiest of the war. And Barcelona was the last place to hold out. And until relatively recently, Catalonia, which is the province that Barcelona was in, was seceding from Spain. They still haven't forgotten. So really confusing fight. You have the relatively organized but small group of fascists against more people but really disorganized Republicans. That's Republican propaganda. Here are all these people boosting up, trying to say they're a bunch of Nazis. That's International Brigade. Those are American soldiers. And you notice some were communists. They have that there. Those are Americans. Friend of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. Franco. Germans and Italians at first just sent supplies, but then they sent men. Here are Italian volunteers to fight for fascism on the streets of Madrid after it fell to the nationalists. Here are German bombers. And after Germany began to rebuild their air force, they essentially had a training ground to bombers that would be obsolete pretty quick when the war began. But when it first started, these were devastating. German dive bombers, the word for dive bomber is Stuka. And these are old transport planes. They try to break into bombers. It went very well, but still, they began to use tactics and experiment with tanks and other weapons in this really bloody civil war. And there's one more thing about the Spanish Civil War. And this is going to be a terrible precursor to modern wars. From then on, significantly more civilians died than soldiers. Significantly more civilians are going to die in World War II than soldiers. And so on. Every other war. Once they adopt total war, bombing of civilians, or at least not bothering about bombing military targets that are in civilian areas. Civilians, including Germans would terror bomb a small northern Spanish town called Guernica. That's it after German Stukas and other bombers bombed it. Thousands of civilians would be killed. In fact, this really terrified. You can imagine people in Britain are thinking this will be London or Paris or New York. Yeah.
Didn't Picasso make a painting of that? Yeah.
The great Spanish post-impressionist artist Pablo Picasso, who was in Paris at this time, that's where artists went to Paris, would make one of his most famous paintings using he's kind of had this 3D in a two-dimensional plane, but trying to show the terrors of Guernica, one of the most famous paintings. I really like Picasso. There's a lot of really good Picasso paintings. There's a lot that aren't that good. He had to feed his family. Yeah.
What was that bombing?
Terror bombing. Basically they wanted to terrify the civilians so the fascists could take it. Terror bombing.
So
Germans and Italians.
German.
Well, the Germans actually did it. Germans bombed Guernica, a Spanish state,
Just
to help the fascists win. And Germans are going to do it to Warsaw, Rotterdam, and then every city they could in England. And then the Allies will do it. Terror times 1,000. And the Allies get a hold of this, the US and the British. Well, with that, so we already have fighting and this feeling that war is coming, this run up to war, while the United States is still kind of staying out with virtually no army, relatively strong navy, but that's it. This area right here, you see it orange? That was supposed to be demilitarized by the Treaty of Versailles. It's called the Rhineland. And the idea was that the Rhineland, the same area that France occupied back in 23, the Rhineland would be, if it's demilitarized, then Germany won't have troops right next to France to give them a buffer. That's in the Treaty of Versailles. Now, Germany had already been pushing against the treaty, but nothing blatant. They've kind of worked on some planes and some tanks, but it's all been underground. But in 1936, Hitler ordered the militarization. He ordered troops to march over the Rhine River bridges and occupy the Rhineland. That's a bridge that's Remagen. All these bridges would be blown up in World War II. But this is a big step. And the soldiers were told, if France does anything, run away. If France crosses the border, the German army is so small. So they're going to militarize the Rhineland, violate the Treaty of Versailles, and see what happens. Hitler is taking a really risky step. And if France would have sent a couple divisions of troops over, France had a significantly bigger army. France had a great army. The problem with France was, like World War I, bad leaders, really bad leaders in World War II. But you know what else? They won World War I. So they thought they figured it all out. Technology changed, and they still think they're fighting in 1918, essentially. And by the time they really started to change, it was kind of too late. But anyways, they didn't do anything. And that's the key element. Hitler could have been totally humiliated. Everything that's going to happen in the next few years would have been changed, altered. Hitler might not have been able to survive as dictator, but France did not do anything. They wanted to, but Britain was reluctant to help, and France didn't want to go out it alone because they remembered World War I. So they didn't stop Germany. That is a key moment of them marching over the bridges, cavalry. A key moment. This is the moment. In hindsight, where if they would have reacted strongly here in the Rhineland, perhaps World War II, at least what we know of it, wouldn't have happened. But what happened? Hitler was emboldened. I can do anything. But not only that, here's the big thing we have to get. This is when Hitler began to rearm. He said, the hell with the treaty, and they began to rearm. They brought back conscription. Do you remember conscription? What is conscription? The draft. They started openly making tanks. Not very good tanks, but they actually had better tactics with them. They had pretty good planes, short range, but pretty good planes. They started building submarines. They even started building a couple battleships that violated the treaties. Stupid, big waste of resources, but stupid for their, I guess looking back, but they wasted their resources. But they're just violating the treaty. That is a key moment. This is like the line. Who knows? Now I know I jumped to Kristallnacht because it relates to Nuremberg laws. But you notice that's 38. That's why 2 years after, everyone knows war is coming. I like this one. There are them goose-stepping over the Treaty of Versailles. There's Hitler showing his hunting trophies. These are other countries that are going to go. For some reason, Versailles is a rhino. I totally forgot something in here. Actually, this happened when Hitler was still in the 1920s. He wanted to create basically it was his bodyguard, special detachment, a special force called the Sturmstiefel. Eventually, this would become kind of an army within an army in Nazi Germany. And they would be an elite, all-Aryan force. By the time the war began, they pretty much abandoned that. You're breathing, you're in. But this SS would be not only the concentration camp guards, but they would also be another part called the Waffen-SS. They were soldiers. And by the middle of World War II, the SS would become a big part of the German army. Now, they weren't very well led. They actually weren't very good soldiers, but they were fanatical. And they got the bulk of the good equipment. It was a dumb move by the Germans, but Hitler was kind of feeding his own private army. But you can imagine the Allies hated these fanatical Nazis. The Allies hated them. The Soviets did not take them prisoner. They have a tattoo identification. They rip it up. They have a tattoo. They're dead. Soviets had a good reason to be angry at the Germans. This is goose stepping. That is a ceremonial march. You can't do it very long, but it's a march where you kind of kick your leg forward. You might hold it. That's goose stepping. And so they're all marching together. It has that kind of look. It's for like, you know, to give a little bit of intimidation. You see guards like in front of capitals and things like that. The U.S. used to goose step. World War II kind of ended a lot of that. So goose stepping is going to come kind of synonymous with Germans. So that's SS soldiers goose stepping. And that's why I find it so disturbing. This was sold in the United States. Nazi Barbie. Look at this. Look at Nazi Barbie. First off, humans don't come like this. If this was proportionally human, that neck would be like this foot-long neck. People don't, but not only that, look at this. You think this is a coincidence? You think so? And look at this. Hiling. This was something for kids, the children. Well, that's an acrobatic. Yeah. Goose stepping? Are you ready? Come on, Nazi Barbie, you can do it. Ooh, you did so well last period. Nazi. Nazi Barbie goose steps. Yeah, look at this. That is the most terrifying, and this was given to children. Yeah, it's supposed to be like, oh, you can walk with your Barbie. And this was years ago, but a student class, we did a unit special topics about the Cold War, and she made a bomb shelter. She went to put a family in it, so that's this, and I think there's a Ken doll in there, and a horse. And she left it here, but I said, oh, what's this? Oh, it walks. And she did it. Oh my God, it's a Nazi. So that's her. Yeah.
Why does it walk? It creeps me out.
Yeah, isn't that weird? And why was that? Let's have her goose step. Yeah, she.
Ah, that's so weird.
Yeah. Are you? Nazi propaganda is everywhere. So, anyway, by the way, that is pretty. She has the ponytails, but it's pink. All right, so let's get back to this. All right, fun with Nazi Barbie. So, 1938, Germany, violating the treaty again, unified with Austria. Austria, also humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles. Remember, they were once a big empire. They called this unification Anschluss. All we need to know is 1938. And this was explicitly denied in the Treaty of Versailles, that they didn't want Austria and Germany, the two big Germanic-speaking countries, to unify. And actually what happened is there's political problems in Austria, and Hitler used that as an excuse to send troops in. And it was a bloodless unification. In fact, Austrians came out, this is in Vienna, lining the streets, cheering the German soldiers coming in. Now the Germans are rearming, and German propaganda is saying they're creating the biggest, most technologically advanced army in the world. Not at all. 60% of the German vehicles, and they had very few vehicles, broke down during a bloodless invasion of Austria. Their army was not ready for war. But they unified, and what did the Western Allies do? Nothing again. Basically, it was like, what do we care of Austria? I mean, Austria is a little country. Which, by the way, that's why after World War II, the Allies will occupy Austria like they did Germany, make occupation zones. That is Anschluss. There's Austrians and with Germany. Happy Austrians. And then in 1938, the Sudetenland. And once again, Hitler is portraying himself as the protector of Germans, of German people. The Sudetenland is the western border of Czechoslovakia. It's right here along the German border. It's this province. About 60% of the population are ethnic Germans. They've never been part of Germany. They were part of the old Austrian Empire. But Hitler said, these Germans are being mistreated and abused by the evil Czechoslovakian government. They weren't. But they demanded that summer, they demanded the Sudetenland must be turned over to Germany. This is from Time magazine in 1938. They have a bunch of these maps like that. They're actually pretty cool maps. They're well done in 38. And I love it gives the information and talks about it. And then, if you're not sure, it compares Czechoslovakia to Florida. I just like that. You get an idea of the size. But when this happened, Czechoslovakia, the last remaining democratic republic in Central Europe, they had allies, Britain and France. And Britain and France vowed to defend them. But especially Britain. Britain's like, I don't want a war over this. And they begin to desperately try to stop Hitler from taking it. Because the Czechs said, we're gonna fight. And Czechoslovakia had a strong army with really powerful defenses in the mountains here. A lot of them are still there, you can go tour them. I only saw one. We're on a train, and we stopped. The train stopped on a siding for a little bit. We're just sitting there and looked up at the hill, and they're built into, you can see some of the remnants of the old Czech 1930s fortifications. And I was like, cool, and I said, let's go. And my wife and sister and brother-in-law said, we don't want to see a Czech fort. So, that it did go. No, we want to get to Prague. Well, yeah, but it's short. All right, so that's pretty funny. But I want to go. I'm going to go someday. Someday I'm going to make that my home. Okay, so 2 different conferences are going to happen, but the most important one is going to happen in Munich, in the Nazi headquarters in Munich, this big ugly building there. 4 leaders from Europe are going to be there. Okay, we know who Hitler is, right? Mussolini. Mussolini, he saw himself as kind of like a power broker, but he's getting closer and closer to the Nazis. Basically, the Nazis allowed him, supported him in Ethiopia, he'll support him here. They're close to becoming allies. Chamberlain is the one we have to get, and he is the Prime Minister of Britain, and he is desperate to avoid another war. Daladier is this guy in the middle right there. He's the Premier of France. He doesn't want war either, but he went there assuming we're going to have war. The Great War, another Great War is happening. He was absolutely convinced of it. Mussolini, first off, is the only person here who speaks a common language, or can speak all the languages. This blustering, bloviating blowhard balding blowhard, but he could speak 6 languages. So he's kind of going around, and you can just imagine him just, if he was like this, just ranting and raving and strutting and preening. I mean, that's the way Mussolini was. In fact, that reminds me of something. To really understand Mussolini, and also the power of fascism, and this should also cause you a little bit of fear. We'll come back to this. Let me show you a little bit of footage. This is a rally. For a fascist rally, these are fascists in front of the Colosseum. Makes sense in Rome, you know, Roman greatness. Full of cats. I'm not making it up. There are cats everywhere in the Colosseum. Just you look, there's cats everywhere. That is true. All right, moving on. First, we get Mussolini, and then we'll watch some of the parade. That's all I'm going to say for now. So first off, here's Mussolini.
Satisfied with their place in the world, were given the same assurances by their new leader, Benito Mussolini, who promised them a new Roman Empire. In the world, were given the same assurances by their new leader, Benito Mussolini, who promised them a new Roman Empire. Millions of Italians rejoiced in Italy's newfound pride and productivity, the seeming miracle of fascism of an empire. Millions of Italians rejoiced in Italy's newfound pride and productivity, the seeming miracle of fascism.
You can't make that up. Okay, maybe one truck of fascism, but no. National fascism, what a pervasive idea that is. And the Catholic Church would collaborate with the fascists and the Nazis. Trust me, this will become a source of great embarrassment for them after the war. But fascist nuns, yes, that is the greatest thing ever put on film. Combined with Mussolini, I don't mean great as in good. I just mean like, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. So back to this. Here, Chamberlain convinced Hitler. What a thing, you saw fascist nuns and Nazi Barbie. Have I just totally destroyed all of your, you had this kind of myth-like vision of the world, and I just now destroyed it. All right, Chamberlain was able to convince Hitler. In fact, Hitler, who wanted war, Hitler wanted war. He convinced Hitler to just take the Sudetenland. And then Hitler agreed, that's all I want. I just want to protect the Germans there. I will do nothing else. In fact, they gave Hitler a piece of paper. Basically, they had this signed up and it said, sign this. And Hitler was like, sure, I'll sign it. I'll sign it. This piece of paper right there, he's signing it right there with Mussolini behind him. You have that. But, now as we all know, you can trust Hitler. Hitler would never lie unless he's speaking. Or writing. Okay, don't trust Hitler. Hitler wrote this. Chamberlain went back and was seen as a hero. In fact, we're going to jump. Oh, almost forgot. They just gave up the Sudetenland. What countries not even at this meeting? The Czechs weren't even invited. Can you imagine what the Czechs thought when they knew their two allies are throwing them under the bus? This pretty much ended their country. It did. In fact, it ended arguably until 1989. The government would collapse. I mean, this was a disaster. And they lost all their border defenses, gone now, because the Sudetenland is going to be occupied by the Germans. And the US wasn't there, of course. Remember, what other big country was going to be there? The Soviet Union wasn't there either. And Stalin was furious. And yes, his mortal enemy was Hitler, but he blamed Britain and France. This will become crucial tomorrow when Victor brings his helmet and we just have to. So, let's get to this. This is going to be called appeasement. In fact, Munich is going to become synonymous with appeasement. You want another Munich means appeasement. Appeasement means giving into aggression. Thinking that if Britain and France gave the Sudetenland to Germany, they'll have enough. But in this case, it emboldened Hitler. It rewarded aggression, thus encouraging more aggression. Once he got that, he could do more. And you could argue, going back to the ones I showed you, there's other ones, but not stopping them in Spain, the Rhineland, Anschluss, and remilitarizing. They didn't stop them, do what they want. Ironically, it's going to look back and Britain's going to be really embarrassed. And it's going to be, we should have stopped them there. Even though the Rhineland's a bigger deal, this was so obvious. Because this is Chamberlain at the airport. In fact, that was the first time we ever rode on a plane. It was to Munich and then back. 73-year-old Chamberlain. Here he is waving that piece of paper that Hitler signed. Peace in our times. And he was cheered. We don't have to have another battle of the Somme. Daladier thought he'd be met by mobs, furious at him giving it to the Germans. He was met by hundreds of thousands of cheering people to us all the way from the airport. We don't have another Verdun. And so appeasement would be a mistake, looking back at it, the beauty of hindsight. But then again, diplomacy is complex. It isn't a solid answer. There is one sure lesson, though, we can get from Munich. And it's one lesson, if I were you, I'd take for the rest of your life, every moment you have. Don't trust Adolf Hitler. If Adolf Hitler wants to make a deal with you, don't believe him. That would make it even more terrifying in a way. But at least they wanted to believe.
Even if he didn't kill himself, he'd still be wasting his life.
Alien technology. So, with that, after the war, that's what we got to get. After the war, Munich is going to be used time after time to justify actions by the United States. Saying that there's some aggression going on and the US has got to do it or we'll have another Munich. We have to go in to Korea, South Korea, to stop an invasion by North Korea because we got to stop communist aggression. We can't have another Munich. We got to form our first military alliance called NATO to get involved overseas. But we can't have another Munich. We have to get involved in a civil war in South Vietnam. Munich. Time after time, we have to build 60,000 nuclear weapons because the Soviets are going to build nuclear weapons. We can't have another Munich. Heck, you'll see it after the war. Iraq in 1990 invaded Kuwait. No, we didn't even really like Kuwait. The U.S. would send 530,000 troops there to kick them out. Why? Munich. They said it over and over again. In fact, here's a cartoon talking about 2003 and so-called weapons of mass destruction in Iran and Iraq. Munich. Everybody thinks, okay, it'd be justifying some pretty, well, policies that would turn out to be incorrect or not very well thought out. In the 2016 election, a number of times it was brought up, we got to stop. It's either called ISIS or ISIL or Daesh. All the names for that group of basically pirates and thugs and hooligans. I mean, they're really just a bunch of horrific people who drive around with Toyota pickups. It's true they like Toyota pickups. But they're horrible. But they're just, I mean, they're a tiny little group, but we got to stop them there because of Munich. And I saw this, it was a clip of it. This woman, this was on Fox News. There's one of these pundits, and I really respect pundits, so I shouldn't say bad things about them. But that's me saying no. They're jokes for the most part. She said, we got to go in there. We must be more aggressive than what we are now against ISIS. You know, I guess bombing them 1,000 times is not enough. But we got to do more. And why? Munich. We can't have another Munich. But it was really funny because the person next to him asked, hey, what happened to Munich? She had no idea. All she knew was she had a little piece of paper. Her talking point was Munich. And so she goes, Hitler and stuff. But it's still bad. Munich. I like Munich. So, here's another good cartoon. He's doing this, which is an insult, neener. He's doing that. Over the democracy, that's a good cartoon. Okay, so, it turned out to be pure appeasement. In 1930, 6 months later, Germany took the rest of Czechoslovakia. And the Czechs folded, they couldn't do anything. Or Czechoslovakia. And then they went after the Polish corridor. The Polish corridor is this finger of land that separates Germany into two parts. This was done after the Treaty of Versailles. The idea was Poland needed access to the sea. But here's Germany, here's Germany. The population of this area right here of Poland, you see in the white, it was about 60 to 70% Germans. So once again, what did Hitler say? The Germans are being mistreated. And the Polish government is taking away their rights. Actually, Poland was a nasty dictatorship who actually took away land from Czechoslovakia in the Munich Agreement right here. So Poland was not this saint. But they were not going to turn this over, and they vowed to fight. And Britain and France this time said, we vowed to defend Poland. Just like they vowed to defend Czechoslovakia. At least that's what Hitler thought. But, last two things for today. The German army was terrified. And they made it clear to Hitler, we're not ready to fight. We just started to rearm. We have virtually no mechanized transportation. In fact, over 90% of our forces and their transportation are either still on foot or horseback. And that would be that way for the whole war. The Germans had very few tanks, very few trucks. Their propaganda made it seem like they had more. They said, we'll be ready to fight in 1945. That fight against the Soviets everyone expected. What's ironic about the year 1945? Yeah, the war was already over. Which all, by the way, should make all of you very afraid right now, in a way. Army unprepared, totally unprepared. Their industry unprepared. Their country was led by incompetent gangsters. And they nearly won. Yeah.
What year?
39. Thank you for asking that, because I don't think I said that. Yeah, that's kind of an important point. Oh, before you go, one other country is watching this very worried. I know what you're thinking. And yes, you're right. He is the friend of all children. Stalin! Are you happy now that you saw the greatest thing ever put on film? Who's happy? Admit it. You saw Nazi Barbie, and you saw that.
Wait for this all year.
Where did my Shakespearean insult mug go? Oh no, the Shakespearean insult mug is gone. It didn't look perfect, but that's really cool. Grace, that's really cool. They do have some neat things there. That's really cool. Thank you for that.
I was figuring I have to get myself on there every morning to study by the presidents, my God, with the slogans.
Did you hear us? I said you heard
I know about that.
What a graceful,
You know,
graceful person needs a graceful picture.
here it is, people.
Partridge, we forgot.
The presidential slogan mug.
Wow.
Ooh, that's cool.
Back to normalcy. I like Ike. Tippy Canoe and Tyler 2. 54-40 or fight. Wait for it. Hoover.
Log cabins and hard cider.
Huh?
Log cabins and hard cider.
They have
Make America Great.
yeah, Tippy Canoe and Tyler 2. Yeah, they don't have log cabin and hard cider, but they have Tippy Canoe. They have Reagan's slogan in 1980. Let's make America great again. Gee, I wonder who stole that slogan. Who is James K. Polk? 54-40 or fight. Not just peanuts. That's Carter, yeah? Oh! We'll do it tomorrow. Because I've not had a chance to grade it. AuH2O, in your heart, you know he's right. AuH2O, who's that? Goldwater. Or as the Democrat said, in your gut, you know he's nuts. Free soil, free speech, free labor, free press, free mind.
Mr. Purchase, have you ever seen the Daily Show? The Daily Show and the interview of Trump supporters?
Who?
The interview of Trump supporters.
I haven't seen that one. No.
Oh my gosh, it is so funny.
Well, no,
I can't even-
it's easy to make fun of people. You throw a camera in front of you, you edit it, so it's going to be. You'll always find people that look, you know,
It's,
to make. It's like that when they go, you know, they go on the street. It doesn't mean they're not funny.
Yeah, but it's like, being president is a man's job. Women have too many hormones and would just blow up the world.
That's a pretty.
Yeah.
You can probably find the majority of people who vote Republican would agree with that. Yeah.
Chinatown. It's the worst, most offensive thing I've ever seen. Like they use these weird mystical music and like go up to people who can't speak English. It's horrifying.
Well,
That's what my dad watches.
Let's get back to Stalin. There's Stalin, people.
Only a baby.
He was not graceful.
I'm trying to get it back to my math. So tonight I'll have to go and I'll do like favorites and dark characters. That's
So, I found out I should be gone Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday right after break.
Where are you going? You just found out?
Yeah, well, I kind of forgot. We had a meeting yesterday and I realized.
I just saw that.
Okay. Well, we'll be doing space race stuff.
Okay, just notes.
Yeah.